I'm now reading about Pop's Christmas wish. Hope for hope for better world. In his speech on Christmas Day, Pope Francis said he hopes for a better world, including successful Middle East negotiations in the land of Jesus' birth, peace for Syria and several war-torn African countries, and dignity for refugees fleeing misery and conflict. Francis spoke from the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to some 70,000 cheering tourists, pilgrims, and Romans in the square below. He said he was joining all those hoping for a better world. Among places ravaged by conflict, Francis singled out Syria, which saw its third Christmas during civil war, South Sudan, the Central African Republic, Nigeria, and Iraq. The Pope prayed that Jesus, the Prince of Peace, would bless the land where you choose to come into the world and grant a favorable outcome to the peace talks between Israelis and Palestinians, healed the wounds of the beloved country of Iraq, once more struck by frequent acts of violence. Francis then explained his concept of peace. True peace is not a balancing of opposing forces. It's not a lovely facet with concealed conflict and divisions. The Pope said in his first Christmas message since being elected pontiff in March, peace calls for daily commitment, Francis said, reading the pages of his speech which were ruffled by a chilly wind, with a reference to attacks on Christians in Africa and parts of the Middle East. Francis prayed that God protect all who are persecuted in your name. Recalling the hundreds of migrants who drowned trying to reach European shores, Francis also prayed that refugees receive hope, consolations, and assistance. In the Mideast, pilgrims celebrated Christmas Day in the ancient Bethlehem Church, where tradition holds Jesus was born, as candles illuminate the sacred site and the joyous sound of prayer filled its overflowing halls. This year's turnout has been the largest in years in Bethlehem, and the celebrations have been marked by careful optimism amid ongoing Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. Leaders expressed hope that the coming year will finally bring the Palestinians an independent state of their own. The top Roman Catholic cleric in the Holy Land, Latin Patriarch Fold, led a prayer for some 1,000 worshippers as bells rang and tourists from around the world flocked to the 4th century church of the Nativity complex to see the grotto, that is Jesus' traditional birthplace. The whole world now is looking at Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus. The birthplace of Jesus. Toll said in his annual address, "The Holy Land is where Jesus was born in a grotto, and we have to reflect this bright picture of Jesus by representing the morals of Jesus, the message of Jesus, the message of love and reconciliation. Bethlehem lies 10 kilometers, 6 miles south of. Entry to the city is controlled by Israel, which occupied the West Bank in 1967. Following a Palestinian uprising that began in 2000, the numbers of visitors to Bethlehem have plunged, including for Christmas. But thanks to a period of relative calm, they have been steadily climbing in recent years, and while still below the record levels of the 1990s, got an extra push this year following the resumption of Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. Iskander Salem, an 18-year-old Palestinian, said the Christmas spirit was uniting those gathered Wednesday. We all feel that Jesus is with us today, he said. Later, Pope Francis will deliver his first Christmas message as pontiff from the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to pilgrims, tourists, and Romans gathered in the piazza below. I'm now reading about another court defeat for Utah on gay marriage. A federal appeals court has refused yet again to stop gay marriage in Utah, making it more likely that same-sex weddings in the home of the Mormon Church are here to stay for the immediate future. The 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals rejection of Utah's request for an emergency order to put gay marriage on hold marked yet another legal setback for the state. Utah lawyers have repeatedly struck out in their bid to block gay marriage, getting rejected on 4 occasions in recent days. Utah's last chance to temporarily stop the marriages would be a long-shot request before U.S. Supreme Court. That's what the Utah Attorney General's office is prepared to do, spokesman Ryan Brockman said. Governor Gary Herbert's office declined to comment on the decision. We are disappointed in the ruling, but we just have to take it into the next level, Brookman said. Cortobias, a constitutional law professor at Virginia's University of Richmond, who has tracked legal battles for gay marriage, said he expects the U.S. Supreme Court to make a decision by Friday. He thinks Utah faces long odds to get their stay granted, considering 2 courts have already rejected and marriages have been going on for days now. The longer this goes on, the less likely it becomes that any court is going to entertain the stay, Tobias said. Judge Robert Jr. Shapley's decision last week to strike down a 2004 voter-approved gay marriage ban sent gay couples rushing to country clerk office to get marriage license. About 700 gay couples have obtained license since Friday, with most of the activity in Salt Lake City. The frenzy has put Utah at the center of the national debate on gay marriage, given the state's long-standing opposition. The standing opposition, given the state's long-standing opposition to same opposition, given the state's long-standing opposition to same-sex weddings and its position as headquarters for the Mormon Church. It made Utah the 18th state where gay couples can wed or will soon be able to marry. The appeals court said in its short ruling Tuesday that a decision to put gay marriage on hold was not warranted, but said it put the case on the fast track for a full appeal of the ruling. One of the couples that brought the case, Maudie Beatty and Derek Kitchen, were driving home from the grocery store when their attorney called with the good news. Betty said, "It's wonderful that multiple levels of courts are making it clear that there's no room for discrimination. It seems like we win over and over again. This is crazy." Betty said, "This has been the best Christmas gift ever." Shelby's ruling has created a confusing set of circumstances for country clerks, same-sex couples, and state officials as they wait on an appeals court to bring some clarity to the issue. Some country clerks were refusing to issue marriage license to gay couples, even though they could face legal consequences. The Utah Attorney General's office warned countries they could be held in contempt of federal court if they refused to issue the licenses. In the meantime, state agencies have begun trying to sort out how the gay marriages may affect state services. Herbert's office sent a letter to state agencies Tuesday afternoon advising them to comply with the judge's ruling or consult the Utah Attorney General's office if the ruling conflicts with other laws or rules. Conflicts with other laws or rules. Laws or rules. With other laws or rules. Laws or rules. The Utah Department of Workforce Services, which administers programs such as food stamps and welfare, is recognizing the marriages of gay couples when they apply for benefits. Spokesman Nick Dunn told the Associated Press on Tuesday. It's unclear whether Utah will allow married same-sex couples to jointly file their state income tax returns next year, as they will be able to do for federal returns. Charlie Roberts, a spokesman for Utah State Tax Commission, said the agency will still need to consult the Attorney General's office about the issue. In court Monday, Utah lawyer Philip Lotz described the scenario unfolding in the state as a chaotic situation. He urged the judge to take a more orderly approach than the current frenzy. Until the final word has been spoken by this court of the Supreme Court on the constitutionality of Utah's marriage laws, Utah should not be required to enforce Judge Shelby's view of a new and fundamentally different definition of marriage. The state said in a motion the appeals court. I'm now reading about years after holiday slaying, traditions help heal. 5 years after a man dressed as Santa Claus massacred 9 members of her family on Christmas Eve, the surviving daughter of the Ortega clan worked to master her mother's puzzle recipe to serve at the traditional family dinner that's now forever tinged with tragedy. The recipe was one from Letitia childhood and a reminder of festive meals she hadn't enjoyed since Bruce Pardo walked through the door of her parents' home outside Los Angeles 5 years ago, killed her family, and burned the place down. In a matter of minutes, he lost nearly everyone she would look up to. A parent, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Her 2 sisters-in-law and 17-year-old nephew also died. But she was far from alone in her losses. 13 sons and daughters lost at least one parent that night. 13 sons and daughters lost at least one parent. Lost at least one parent that night in Covina. 30 sons and daughters lost at least one parent that night in Covina, a suburb about 20 miles northeast of Los Angeles. She, the youngest of 5 children, became a reluctant matriarch, maintaining the tight-knit family traditions and happier memories. The remaining family meets for dinner, exchanges gifts, and shares memories. A Christmas Day trip to church now is followed by a trip to a cemetery. Pardo, her former brother-in-law, had carried a small arsenal of guns and fuel to torch the family's home that Christmas Eve. It was part of a plan triggered by his ex-wife's decision to divorce him. An FBI profile found that his actions were likely spurred by extreme narcissism and obsessive compulsive disorder. When Pardo was severely burned in the attack, he ditched his elaborate getaway plan and killed himself with a gunshot to the mouth. Meanwhile, her family scrambled to pick up the pieces. With his parents dead, one nephew became the guardian of his 3 minor siblings. She and her husband took in her sister's youngest daughter. Her then 8-year-old daughter Katrina was wounded by a gunshot to the cheek after Santa came to the door. She worked to save Christmas for the kids, telling them that it wasn't the real Santa, and calling friends from the hospital to make sure gifts were put under the tree. Were put under their tree. The kids were later sent a camp that helps with grief. The kids were later sent to a camp that helps with grief. The kids were later sent to a camp that helps with the kids were later sent to a camp that helps with grief. The kids were later sent to a camp that helps with grief. For her, now 41, years of therapy have helped, though she still suffers from some anxiety and nightmares. I lost my identity completely. I lost my identity. She said, I always used to tease them that I have five sets of parents, that I have five sets of parents, everyone telling me that what to do and how to do it. I can't even tell you how much I miss them. I can't even tell you how much I miss them. An overwhelming but hard to describe feeling of loss often sneaks up on her, especially in December. Everywhere you turn there are memories of what we used to have, and the memories of that night. You can't escape it. She said Christmas will always be there, and we continue to celebrate it. The family has been especially touched by others' tragedies, particularly during the holidays, when a Connecticut woman lost her $3, and parents in a house fire 2 years ago. She encouraged her daughters to write letters to the woman. Last year, when the gunman killed 20 children and 6 adults at a Newton school, they again wrote letters. Katrina usually writes, "It will be hard, but just have hope. Don't give up," she said. That's most likely the family's upbeating message. We have to keep moving in our everyday moments. We have to keep moving in our everyday moments, she said. There are those moments we think we've been through. There are those moments we think we've been through the worst. There are those moments we think we've been through the worst, so this cannot break us. For the small Covina Police Department, whose officers responded to one of Los Angeles County's worst mass murders. Memories also persist. The 10 detectives who worked the case all remain with the department. Some of them sometimes swing by a now empty lot where the murder took place. Sure, they can still smell the smoke in the air. The case, with its house fire, many crime scenes, and multiple victims on rainy holiday, has proven to be a teachable moment for other departments around the country. And though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, and though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, the department continues to keep in touch with family and survivors, pursuing leads and following up on details, especially around Christmas. And though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, and though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, and though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, and though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, and though the active investigation wrapped up roughly, and though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, and though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, and though the active investigation wrapped up roughly, and though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, and though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, the department continues to keep in touch. The department continues to keep in touch with family and survivors. Continues to keep in touch with family and survivors. The department continues to keep in touch with family and survivors, pursuing leads and following up on details. And though the active investigation wrapped up roughly 3 years ago, the department continues to keep in touch with family and survivors, pursuing leads and following The department continues to keep in touch with family and survivors, pursuing leads and following up the details.